Would you agree that that would make me feel good about you? Of course it would. So they would start praising the kings and, he desperately wants that huge prize money. Let me ask you guys a question now. When this poet is praising the king, is he doing this out of love and glorification? A lot of the time. Or is he just interested in that which he has to offer, which is the prize money here? Probably by the time he walks away with the prize money and reaches the outside of the palace, they start insulting him and making ridiculing jokes about him. So this isn't, or this type of praise isn't actually what? Coupled with love and glorification. But when we praise Allah Azza wa, it is done with love and glorification. We mean it from our hearts. Right? We mean it from our hearts, done out of veneration, right? And glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the difference when I just praise someone because I'm trying to get into his good books. Because I want him to think good of me. I don't actually do this with what? Love and glorification. So alhamd doesn't just necessarily mean praise. It's so much more than that. It has to be what? Coupled with love and glorification. Does that make sense? I know it's a little bit technical here, but bear with me. He says, Hamdan liman. Hamd. And I've already just explained that. To the one, بالحل في البيوع أغنى عباده عن الممنوع. Right? So we just translate it how it's normally translated for it to make sense in this line of poetry. It says, all praise to the one. بالحل في البيوع أغنى عباده عن الممنوع. The one who has sufficed his servants with what is halal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sufficed an individual with halal from haram. There are enough alternatives with halal, right? That suffices us from needing the haram option. How often do we hear, brothers and sisters? Because I know there's a lot of youngsters here, inshallah ta'ala, so I will be giving small little reminders in between. How often do we hear, I have no option except to work here. I have to do this haram. Otherwise, I will not be able to find what? Money. I will not be able to maintain my livelihood. Is that really the case? Is that really the case, brothers and sisters? I am a disbeliever. I am a disbeliever in this concept of there not being alternatives to halal. I'm a disbeliever in that. I honestly believe, my beloved brothers and sisters, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us in the Quran, وَلَنْ يُخْلِفَ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not fail in His promise. What did the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say to us, brothers and sisters, in a hadith? Encouraging one to move away from that haram that he's involved in. إِنَّكَ لَن تَدَعَ شَيْئًا اتِّقَاءً لِلَّهِ إِلَّا أَعْطَاكَ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا. You do not leave something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, due to you being conscious of Allah Jalla fi'ula, except He will give it out which is better. This is my favorite hadith. If you don't take anything away from this lecture other than this particular hadith, brothers and sisters, be it. You do not leave something for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla. You are being conscious of Allah. You know you shouldn't. You know that this involves haram. Right? You leave it off. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to give it up, which is better. Many of us are in denial. Right? Telling ourselves, wallahi, there's no other option. It is the law of the land. How often have I spoken to an aunt who's wearing jilbab? Right? She's wearing jilbab. Right? Looking to adhere to the rules and regulations of the Sharia. I say to auntie, that which you are doing now is not lawful. It is only going to affect you and your children. Stop bringing up your children with haram. What is she doing? She's cheating the government, lying to them, saying that she is single. When in reality, she's married. Just so she could get a little bit more from the government. Yahsul, does this happen, brothers and sisters? I try to advise, she says, who is going to provide for me if I don't take this money from the government? Our bad thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reached this point, brothers and sisters. This is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You leave off that haram job. I can sit here till tomorrow, brothers and sisters, give you guys stories after stories after stories of people who left haram. And Allah Azza wa Jal always gave them that which is better. Let me tell you guys about my friend Suhail and his wife Maymuna. My neighbor for a very long time. Suhail, his name was, and his wife Maymuna. أتعرفون ماذا حصل? I remember back in 2014, this is when I came back from Yemen. I would normally accompany my father in order to help him with the Hajj services, right? He was one of those customers. He was somebody, mashallah, that really had the zeal and the eagerness to study. So he would invite me over to teach him some books on Tawheed. And at the time, he was jobless. I said to him, why don't you work? He said, oh, I'm an accountant and I have to what? Write down interest and so on and so forth. And I've come to the conclusion now that this is something that does not fall in line with my deen, so I left it. And I remember his in-laws were giving him a very hard time. Right? They were giving him a very, very hard time. Saying, Akhi, it's the law of the land. Come on, you have to look after your family. Right? Just take it. No problem. Allah is Ghafoor Rahim. Allah is oft forgiving and so merciful. He will indeed forgive you. He left it off. He did not go back to that haram. I remember he had a chunk of money. I think it was something like 7,000-8,000 pounds that he worked so hard for. And it's uncertain times now, right? He doesn't know what's going to happen. All of this money, he put it towards the Hajj. Hajj was something like maybe what, 7,000 pounds? And he's only got 1,000 pounds remaining for after when he comes back. Does that make sense? Tayyib. He comes back and still, as he's on the plane coming back to the UK, he's still unsure, uncertain times of what's going to happen. As soon as he comes back, brothers and sisters, right? He has a job offer waiting for him to work where? In Saudi Arabia to teach English. Most people that I've personally come across are either English teachers in Riyadh, Jeddah, and some are fortunate enough to be teachers in Al-Madinah. However, up until this day, it's been since 2015 until this very moment, I've never come across someone who teaches English in Mecca, and I meet a lot of people, and I run into a lot of them as well, right? I've never come across someone who was an English teacher in Mecca, other than this brother, this friend of mine. Both him and his wife were earning 21,000 pounds tax-free. And they had a house, right? And they would only be coming into work maybe once a week. Because a lot of the kids that they were teaching, they were la'abun. They used to mess around. They don't want to attend. So eventually, the deal became you just walk into work once a week. Every other day they're going back and forth to where? The Kaaba. They would go, do tawaf, come back home. What a wonderful life to have. A couple of years after that he comes back, he buys the biggest house on that road of ours. The biggest house. Wallahi al-Azim. You know what I believe? I honestly have this conviction in my heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him all of that because of him leaving it for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla. لا شك ولا ريب. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أغنى عباده عن الحرام أو عن الممنوع. Allah Azza wa Jalla has sufficed you, right? And has promised every single individual that as long as you do what I do, as long as you do what I've informed you and instructed you with, I will give you that which is better. And sometimes, brothers and sisters, it might not necessarily be wealth that Allah Azza wa Jal gives you as a replacement. Allah Azza wa Jal may see that if I was to give him wealth, this would be the reason for his decline. So he replaces that which you have with something other than wealth, but it is better for you. Maybe like a spouse, maybe a type of lifestyle that you are now what? Not in need of coming into contact with haram. It could be that Allah blesses you with a child, but Allah withholds from you money, because Allah Azza wa Jal knows that if He was to now hand over money to you, it would be the cause of your decline and demise. Does that make sense? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise and the most knowing of what is best for us. And sometimes we are individuals who are musta'jilun. We are very hasty. We do not distinguish between that which we have been deprived from and that which is being what? Stored for us so that we can enjoy later on down the line. Not everything that you don't receive there and then is you being deprived of that. But because we are so limited in our thinking, right, we start to make very hasty statements. Why is so-and-so getting it and I don't? How often, brothers and sisters, have we been in a position where we so badly wanted this job opportunity? We really wanted it, but we were held back from it. Agreed? We were held back from it. Us thinking that this is the right thing for me now, at this particular moment. But it was held back. Right? Not realizing that Allah Azza wa Jal has something better waiting for you down the line. Only later on, when you've now been blessed with something far greater, you say, oh, if that didn't happen, I would not have this today. Agreed? يحصل ولا لا? So this myth, I'll call it a myth, of when people say, Wallahi, I have no option except to take this haram opportunity. I remember not so long ago, I drove into, it was late at night and we needed something, right? We went into McDonald's, the drive-thru in London. And I've mentioned this before, so I don't know, maybe some of you guys have heard it. I drove through, and then you know when you reach the first counter, right? Or the first window, there was a Somali guy there, right? I said, "Mesh, I'm Habs Melusa." I said, what are you doing here? Right? I was like, why do you get another job? And I started speaking, even he was shocked that I knew a bit of Somali. Yeah? I said, Mesh, what are you doing here? Goes, someone's got to put food on the table, right? Someone's got to pay the bills. I was like, Sheikh, there's other opportunities. He goes, la, law of the land. And then we had to, I wanted to continue speaking to him, but then the car had to move. It's times like that which makes me really, really appreciate knowledge. Wallahi. Honestly does. Sometimes we think that, okay, acquiring knowledge is only for somebody who's trying to become an alim, a scholar. No. We always hear that Islam is a way of life. Na'am. We don't say it's the definition of Islam, but it definitely is a way of life. That teaches you how to maneuver around situations like this. So now imagine to yourself this miskeen brother who's uneducated, right? Who doesn't know everything that I just mentioned now. How Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to give you that which is better. And living a life of halal that is extremely precious. And not knowing that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا يدخل الجنة لحم نبتت من سحت. Right? A piece of flesh that has been produced through haram will never enter into Jannah. A piece of flesh, right, that has been produced through haram will never enter into Jannah. Right? People don't actually realize this haram that I consume, it affects my children. If the parent is now doing that which relates to benefit fraud, should it be surprising tomorrow if your child is doing something similar, he's also doing fraud? Somalis they say, right? Did you guys get that point? Gilka. Everybody know the gil, right? The camel. The camel has also what? Flock, children. Wherever the camel goes, you see the flock following suit. Going the exact same direction. In Leicester, aunties would come up to me and they would say, Wilkig al-Hadam. Speak to my son. Right? He's cleaning out Barclays bank accounts. 18-year-old is driving the latest car. CC scans. 2021 or 22 plate. 18 years of age. Where did he get the car from? Haram money. Cleaning out Barclays bank accounts with whatever method they use. And then she's saying to me, please, Lahadam, speak to him. I asked the auntie, are you doing benefit fraud? She goes, okay, Mahasimena. What should I do? I say to the auntie, are you just upset because he's making more money than you? That's the reality of the matter, right? That's the reality of the matter. You're cheating the government, which is haram. He's just making more money than you. Why are you upset? Huh?
Should be proud.
Should be proud, huh? The parent, brothers and sisters, they set the precedence. If you, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be benefit fraud, you could be dealing in haram, in whatever job it might be. Tomorrow your kids are going to be what? Following the exact same direction. Right? And it will be a life, brothers and sisters, that is what? Filled with hardships and struggles. Because you are what? Constantly at war with Allah Azza wa Jal. I just came back from Australia last Wednesday. Not this Wednesday, but the one before that. Came back from Australia. Especially in Sydney, the Lubnanis have taken over. Wallah, you think you're in Lebanon. Even the McDonald's halal. They've literally taken over. When you look at the houses, it shocks you that Muslims are living in. Over there, they got money. Right? Brothers, they would take me for a drive and we would see all of these huge mansions. Maybe not mansions, but it's huge. Even the way it's built here in the UK, I don't think you can polish your house, right? You have to get planning permission, and you have to get this, and you have to get that. طيب. That one looks absolutely what? Splendid. I've even been into some of the houses, it shocks you the way it looks. One time I was driving, one of the brothers, he said, looks amazing, right? Looks splendid. Up until the sheikh receives a phone call. Right? Being told about what's happening in the house. The father tries to give his kids everything, but the house is like a war zone. Is it surprising? No, it's not. And that is simply because of the haram that is so instilled within this household. So going back to the point that he was making, أَغْنَى عِبَادَهُ عَنِ الْمَمْنُوعِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sufficed His servants from having to deal with haram and that which is prohibited. I'll conclude this reminder with, before I move on to the next kind of poetry, with what Hassan al-Basri mentioned. Hassan al-Basri, brothers and sisters, he says, قرأت في 90 موضعا أن الله قدر الأرزاق. I read in 90 places, 9, 0, not 1 9, 9 0, that Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed your provision. مقرنها. It is decreed. وقرأت في موضع واحد أن الشيطان يخوف أولياءه. But I read in one place, that the shaitan scares the people with what? With what? Poverty. الشيطان يعيدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. Shaitan scares the people with poverty, always whispering, oh, if you don't take this job, then you'll struggle. For a whole year you will be what? Out of business, and then this will happen, that will happen. Isn't that what the shaitan does? Makes you feel like as if there's no other option other than this one. So what did Hassan al-Basri say? We ended up believing the shaitan, in this one place, but we fail to believe Allah Azza wa Jal in all of these 90 places. Wallahi brothers, I think we can sit here till tomorrow. I'll tell you guys what, stories after stories of people who left haram for the sake of Allah. And Allah Azza always gave them that which is better. Always gave them that which is better. Bila istithna. Right? And then he says, صَلِّ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ مُنْتَخِبِهِ أو مُنْتَخَبِهِ قَالَ لَنَا مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ. And then he sends his salah upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the chosen one, who said to us, مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ. I would have gone into the ma'na of as-salah ala nabi. What does it mean to send salutations upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? But for the sake of time, we'll just commence. قَالَ لَنَا, who said to us, مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ. Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for, what does he do? He gives him fiqh in the religion. He gives him fiqh in the religion. This is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is exactly what the Shaykh is alluding to. Right? He mentions this in the line of poetry, but he's alluding to the hadith which has the exact same wording. Whoever Allah Azza wa Jal wants good for, He gives him fiqh in the religion, which I will stand over inshallah ta'ala in a moment. Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, he mentions the mafhum of this. He says, من أراد الله به خيرا فلا بد أن يفقهه في الدين. Whoever Allah wants good for, he must give him fiqh in the religion. ومن لم يرد الله به خيرا ومن لم يفقهه في الدين لم يرد الله به خيرا. And whoever Allah did not want good for, He won't give him that understanding in the religion. Brothers and sisters, we should really take this personally. The fact that we came to the house of Allah and we are trying to build an understanding of our religion, it is because Allah chose us. When we could have been just like everyone else. Sah, today is Saturday morning, probably there's a football game on. Huh? Lunchtime kickoff. Sahih? I don't know who's playing. Right? But you could have definitely been from those who are sitting at home or up to no good, doing all sorts of things on a Saturday afternoon. But you came in the house of Allah Azza wa Jal to gain an understanding of the deen. Allah Azza wa Jal handpicked you out of all of these places to come to His house. Just so what? You can get an understanding of the religion. If the Queen chose you, brothers and sisters, and wanted to give you that, what do they call it? BP or BMP or mother? Huh? The MBE, the OBE, and would you not feel chosen? Would you not feel special? Huh? Allah chose you to give you the mirath al-anbiya, that which has been left behind by the prophets. Does that make sense, brothers and sisters? And this is the most precious thing that you could what? Walk away with. To be able to please none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who provides for you, the one who gives, the one who clothes you, and without Him you would have absolutely nothing. It is Him that we work towards. It is Him that we want to see when we are admitted into Al-Jannah. And there's nothing more greater than what? Seeing the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? We try to please our bosses, brothers and sisters, our bosses. We want to be in their good books. Do we work that hard for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He who provides for you and also your boss. طيب من يريد الله بخير يفقهه في الدين. Whoever Allah Azza wa Jalla wants good for, He gives him what? Fiqh in the religion. What does fiqh mean? We have what? A linguistic meaning of it and also the technical meaning of it. What does it mean linguistically? Jurisprudence, yeah. Linguistically. Jameel. Anyone else? What does al-fiqh mean in the language? We're studying fiqh now, brothers and sisters. We are studying a very important chapter of fiqh, which is the chapter of buying and selling. Al-fiqh, brothers and sisters, in the language, it means fahm, to understand. قالوا يا شعيب ما نفقه كثيرا مما تقول وإنا لنراك أو لنريك فينا ضعيفا. قالوا, they said, O Shu'aib, we do not have fiqh of what you are saying. What is intended here? We don't have fiqh of what you are saying, meaning we don't understand what you're saying. Also, رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Right? رب اشرح لي صدري. Oh Allah, grant me peace in my chest. And make it easy for me, oh Allah. Musa is saying this to Allah Azza wa Jal. واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. And also untie this knot that I have in my tongue, so that they can have fiqh of what I'm saying. Meaning, so they can understand what I'm saying. Because Musa alayhi salatu wasn't the most articulate because of his tongue burning, right? When he was younger. And now he's going back to his people and he wants to what? Get the message across in the most eloquent of ways. That's why he asked Allah Azza wa Jal, Harun akhi, my brother Harun, make him a wazir, make him what? A deputy of mine, somebody who goes with me to deliver the message. Because he what? Struggled. So the point of the matter is, brothers and sisters, fiqh in the language means what? Fahm, to understand. Other scholars, they say, you narrow it down even more, to understand inherently. أي الفهم الدقيق, to have a very inherent understanding of what is being mentioned. And if you want to narrow it down even more, فهم مراد المتكلم, to understand that which the speaker is saying. طيب, what does it mean technically speaking? Al-fiqh. Others, excuse me, right? I know sometimes I might go into some technicalities, but this is not meant to be a lecture. Brother Muhammad, he invited me over to speak about buying and selling. From time to time we'll mention these small little reminders that comes in extremely handy with what we are studying. But it is a lesson type program. Or we hope to, inshallah ta'ala, right, walk away with benefits that we write down. I hope everybody's writing down, inshallah ta'ala. Al-fiqh, brothers and sisters, technically speaking, is split into two. Al-fiqh has more of a broader meaning, and also that which is more specific. A lot of people think when we say fiqh, the only meaning of it is how to make wudu, how to pray, how to fasah. No problem. Right? Al-fiqh, brothers and sisters, is so much more broader than that. When we study aqeedah, when we study fiqh, when we study hadith, the prohibitions and also the commandments of Allah all fall under al-fiqh. This is why Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, when he spoke about the fiqh, he said, فهم معاني الأمر والنهي ليستبصر الإنسان في دينه. It is to understand the commandments and prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yani of the Sharia, so that one may gain insight of the religion. There are so many commandments and prohibitions in the Quran. Are they all fiqh related? Are they all related to wudu and salah and fasting? No. So it's so much more general than that. However, as time went on, the term fiqh got stopped to what? That which we are studying now. Tahara, fasting, buying and selling and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? طيب. He says, وجاء عن عمر حصر البيوع في الذي الفقه درى. It says it has been attributed to Umar ibn Khattab رضي الله تعالى عنه, right? حصر البيوع في الفقه درى. That one should only, because what I'm about to say, brothers and sisters, may shock a lot of people. هكذا قال عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه said this, that one should only transact, one should only buy and sell if he has fiqh. ما رأيكم يا أخوة? It was narrated by Imam Tirmidhi rahmatullahi alayhi that Umar ibn Khattab رضي الله تعالى عنه said, لا يبيع في سوقنا إلا من تفقه في الدين. one should not transact in our markets except if he has fiqh of the religion. How many people are doing Bitcoin here? Bitcoin's not doing the best at the moment, are they? Huh? They recently took a huge hit. Sahurullah, or has it gone better now? I don't know, I'm not up to date with it. I'm not a Bitcoin dealer. Alhamdulillah, I didn't so because a lot of people lost money. Huh? Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, لا يبيع في سوقنا إلا من تفقه في الدين. One should not sell in our markets except if he what? Gain understanding. He has knowledge of buying and selling. Brothers and sisters, let me teach you all a قاعدة. A poet, he says, يحرم إقدام من المكلف على أمور الحكم هل يعرف. It is haram for someone who is religiously obligated, right, to go forth in doing an act of worship unless he has what? Understanding of it. It is haram. You don't know it, you have to go and what? Research. There is a type of knowledge, brothers and sisters, that is wajib upon every single individual here. And that is the acts of worship that we are what? Directly involved in. Like? Which acts of worship are we doing? Every single one of us. Salah. What also? Tahara. Good. What also, brothers and sisters, when the month of Ramadan comes close? Fasting. Brothers and sisters, is it right to say that most people, when the month of Ramadan comes, they have no clue of the ahkam of Siyam? They have no idea of what they're actually doing. So there are acts of worship that every single one here, right, must learn about. It is wujub or it is wajib عينيا على كل أحد. يجب عليهم وجوبا عينيا. Every single person must go and study. However, there are certain things that I'm not going to enforce upon you to study unless the time comes, like Hajj. Am I going to tell everybody here, listen brothers, from today, you must learn Hajj? No. And that is because most people might not necessarily even be capable to go on to Hajj. However, when that time comes, and you have the money, and you go on for Hajj, do you have to learn about Hajj? Yes, you do. Like, most people here, they're not business minded. So they have no interest in what? Having business transactions. Most people just take their 9-to-5 job, right? It's just the basic average pay. Doing inshallah ta'ala that which is halal. Does he now need to go and learn about buying and selling? What you must learn about is whether that job that you're doing is halal. You have to ask. As for going into the ins and the outs and of buying and selling, as a businessman you have to. How many businessmen actually learn about buying and selling, brothers and sisters? Umar Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu is saying, لا يبيع في سوق إلا من تفقه في الدين. One should not transact in our markets unless he has what? Fiqh of the religion. Why? Why would Umar Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu say that? Why do you think he would say that? Don't come to our markets until you learn. What is the scare of happening to this market? What is going to happen? When somebody walks in ignorant and then he starts having these business dealings. Haram will start spreading in the markets. Agreed? Look at the fiqh of Umar Khattab radiallahu ta'ala. He would ban them from coming to the markets to deal. To stop the market from being what? Affected with haram transactions. He won't be able to monitor everything that's happening. Market is big. Right? So don't come until you go and learn. So, if he now allows ignorant people to come to the markets, they'll start having these business dealings, and then it will spread rapidly. But when you have haram in the markets, my brothers and sisters, don't expect any good to come out of it. How often have I sat with businessmen who have been dealing for decades, making all sorts of money, right? However, he's going through so many problems in his life. Why is he going through all these problems? He doesn't know. Because I'm righteous, I go to the masjid, but they will sit down and we now investigate this business dealings he's having. Wallahi, it's not even rocket science to actually figure out that this person is having haram dealings. They will say, أنا ما كنت أدري, I didn't know. Is Allah Azza wa Jal going to hold him account for not knowing? Maybe not. But Allah Azza wa Jal will hold you account for not researching. He'll say, I didn't do this intentionally. Okay, Allah isn't going to hold you account to that. But for not researching, you will be held to account. Because you have been created, my brothers and my sisters, for one sole purpose. What is that? Ibadah. And you cannot worship Allah accordingly except by what? Knowledge. You see, brothers and sisters, why knowledge is so important. It's not just, I want to become a sheikh, I'm going to go to Egypt, Medina, Mecca, or to Yemen, study because I want to become a sheikh. It's not like becoming an accountant. All of us as Muslims, we have to what? Learn to some degree. Right? طيب, is that the only consequence of not researching the transactions that he's involved in? Also, you will find, brothers and sisters, that Allah Azza wa Jalla will suck the barakah out of that transaction. It will be what? Void of barakah, of blessings. Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in hadith, البيعان بالخيار ما لم يتفرقا فإن صدقا وبينا بورك لهما في بيعهما. If they are truthful and they make it clear, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless the transaction. Allah will put barakah in it. That's if you are what? Truthful. Which is the opposite of lying. Some people think that the only way I can what? Sell is if I lie. Yeah? Some people think that. And then the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, وَإِن كَذَّبَ وَكَتَّمَ مُحِقَتْ بَرَكَةُ بَيْعِهِمَا. If they lie and they conceal, Allah Azza wa Jalla will suck the barakah out of that transaction. He will suck it out. It will be what? Void of barakah. And it won't get you anywhere. Even if you think the money is coming in, it affects your life in so many different ways, brothers. It really, really isn't worth it. And you may see that so much money is coming in now. You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgets the actions that you come with? It could be that that wealth you use later on, right? It could be this wealth you use later on for a business deal, which then what? Becomes haba'an manthura. You end up losing everything. You end up losing everything. Even the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said in the hadith, أطيب الكسب عمل الرجل بيده وكل بيع مبرور. The best and most purest types of transactions is that which one does with his hands. It's most blessed. Brothers and sisters, right? Have we noticed over time that some wealth that we acquired lasted longer than others? Is that something that we could say is noticeable? Many people who deal in haram will testify that the haram money doesn't last long. This is the type of barakah that we're also speaking about. Doesn't last long. It slips away very, very quickly. However, subhanAllah, something you strove so hard for, right? And you put so much effort into acquiring, tends to last. Even you will say, subhanAllah, money seems like it's never ending. Even you want to spend on it, you still see this barakah in it. Does that make sense? And the last point that I want to mention, my brothers and my sisters, before I finish with this muqaddimah, right, with this introduction, and then I want to go into some of the conditions of buying and selling. We will also go into storage hunting. You guys heard of storage hunting? It's just a practical example or a contemporary example. What do they also call that magic box on Amazon? You guys heard of that? Magic box, huh? طيب, we'll come on to all of that inshallah. But before I do, Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, بادروا بالأعمال فتنا كقطع الليل المظلم يصبح الإنسان مؤمنا ويمسي كافرا ويمسي الإنسان مؤمنا ويصبح كافرا يبيع دينه بعرض من الدنيا. Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, hasten to doing good deeds. The fitan are like the dark patches of the night. Deep into the night, brothers and sisters, and you are in a forest. Right? You don't have a torch. What do you think will happen to you? You'll be stumbling left, right, and center, sah? Stumbling over. Fitan are like that. When the fitan comes, it causes you to trip, it causes you to stumble. فتنا كقطع الليل المظلم يصبح الإنسان مؤمنا ويمسي كافرا ويمسي الإنسان ويصبح كافرا يبيع دينه بعرض من الدنيا. When he wakes up in the morning as a Muslim, believer, but by the night he's become a kafir. It may well be that as he enters into the night he's a believer, by the morning he has left Fawd al-Islam. How? يبيع دينه بعرض من الدنيا. He sells his religion for what? A small offer of the dunya. بعرض من الدنيا قليل كما جاء في رواية أخرى. For a small portion of this world. How? Right? Some haram business deals emerge and it is too good to turn down. That's what the shaitan is telling you. Right? And you're telling yourself it's just one time. While you're involved in the haram, my brothers and my sisters, one thing leads to another. You know Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi mentions, he says that the ma'asi is barid al-kufr. The sin that one does, it is the first spark to what? To apostasy. When somebody leaves the fault of Islam, brothers and sisters, it doesn't just happen like that. You know what? Let me just pause. It doesn't just happen like that. It's muqaddimat. The things that he may have been directly involved in, which then led to another, and then another, and then another. It is a serious business deal. However, it involves haram. Right? He ends up giving up his religion for that. He ends up giving his religion up for that. I know some Muslims who are now multi-millionaires. You know how they made their money? Because of a gambling opportunity that came by. Or to invest in a casino. Or now you have these stocks online, sah? That people invest in. This one's going up and down, up and down, up and down. Huh? Not so long ago I was advising a brother. What is it called again? A cinema company. What's it called? Cineworld. No. You know, the stock prices were going up and he's investing. Every now and again I have to speak to this relative of mine and I sit him down. You can see his life is going what? Huh? These dealings have an effect, brothers and sisters. It kills your heart whether you see it or not. Huh? It gives you the emptiness of Allah cannot be filled with money. Kills your heart. And he says, فَهَاكَ مِنْ أَحْكَامِهَا الْأَسَاسَ يَا رَبِّ فَاقْبَلْ وَانْفَعْ عَنَّا النَّاسَ. He says, فَهَاكَ مِنْ أَحْكَامِهَا الْأَسَاسَ. Here you have the ahkam, the rulings, which he has called al-asas. Right? نظم الأساسي في المعاملات الجارية بين الناس. It is a poem, brothers and sisters, that gives you a foundation. We're not going to be, of course, going through everything. This is just something khafif that we want to cover bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, that allows us to walk away having some understanding of our transactions that we deal with. This is the foundation. It's called asas, which comes from the term foundation. Right? The mu'amalat al-jariyah, the business deals that one has with others. Yani between the people, that which is pretty common. Ya Rabbi faqbal. He says, oh Allah, accept it from me. وَانْفَعَنَّ النَّاسَ. And cause it to be what? A benefit for the people. طيب. Al-bay'a. Right? I'm just going to take a couple of lines, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to stop, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. We'll be finished maybe in the next 15 to 18 minutes, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Before we go into this, brothers and sisters, I want to speak a little bit about the pillars. The poet says, أركانه العاقد والمعقود وصيغة وكله معقود. There are three pillars when it comes to buying and selling. Pillar number one, my brothers and my sisters, is the aqid. In some terms I'm going to mention in Arabic, but I'll also explain it in English. Al-aqid. Who's the aqid? Aqid, brothers and sisters, is the buyer and the seller. There are rulings that apply to the buyer and seller in our Sharia. Right? There are rulings that apply, and there are conditions that need to be fulfilled. When it comes to who? The buyer and the seller. So the first condition, the first pillar is what? What's the first pillar? The aqid. Who's the aqid? The buyer and the seller. Excellent. الركن الثاني, the second pillar, al-ma'qud. And the ma'qud, brothers and sisters, compromises of two things, just like the first pillar. الثمن والسلعة. The price and also the merchandise. The price and also the merchandise that you are buying. The product or this article that has been purchased, whatever you want to call it. Does that make sense? When you buy something, you need money, sir. You have money which you exchange with the seller. And then he gives you a product in exchange. So the first pillar we were speaking about the aqid, who was the buyer and the seller. Here we're speaking about the ma'qud, which is that which is being bought. And that which is being bought, brothers and sisters, requires a price. So that which is being bought, which is the merchandise, and also the price, is the ma'qud, which falls under the second pillar. And likewise in the Sharia, there are ahkam. There are rulings pertaining to the second pillar that needs to be considered and looked at. The third, brothers and sisters, وَرُكْنُ الثَّالِث هو الصِّيغَة. The expression that is used when carrying out this transaction. How often, brothers and sisters, are we dealing with disputes between the buyer and the seller because of what has been uttered? Oh, he said this to me. No, you didn't say this to me. Right? No, but why? But kada madri ايش. The expression holds huge weight when it comes to what? Buying and selling. وهو على نوعان, and it's of two types. الصيغة القولية والصيغة الفعلية. Right? This transaction, brothers and sisters, it takes place through utterance and also through what? Through action. A transaction can be assembled by one uttering something or by carrying out a particular action. I'll give you guys an example. The asal is of how people buy and sell. I bring you my phone and I say to you, I've sold you this phone. Is that enough though? He then says, qabiltu, I accept. Just like a nikah. What did he say? Qabiltu, I accept. This was the asal. That one takes the merchandise to the buyer and then he utters, I sell it to you. Right? And then the seller then says, qabiltu, I accept. That's the first type, that is done through what? Utterance. The other way, brothers and sisters, that a transaction becomes assembled is by way of action. You know how often we go to the local grocery store, we're in a rush, we take the bread, put on the table, take some money, we put it down, and then we walk out. Does he say anything? He doesn't. Doesn't say anything. Gives the exact amount, he puts it on the table, and then he walks out. He didn't say anything. This is not by way of action. Is this acceptable? Without a shadow of a doubt. Okay? And that is simply because the custom of the people is that you can accept a transaction in this manner. It's how the people deal today, right? Even though the asl, the base ruling when it comes to making an exchange is by way of utterance. He has to utter with his tongue, and then the one who's selling said, okay, I accept selling this product to you. However, if we were to say that that's the only way of transacting, we would be in a bit of a fakhr, right? In a bit of an issue. This is why urf, the customs of the people, right, has a huge role to play in our sharia. Does that make sense? Has a huge role to play in our sharia. The sharia, al-Islam didn't come, brothers and sisters, to eradicate people's normalities and their cultural practices. La. It didn't. طيب. Now we've got the three pillars. What are the three pillars? العاقل والمعقول وكذلك الصيغة. This is just me touching on it. Touching or scratching the surface. Later on when you study buying and selling and transactions, brothers and sisters, each one of them, right, is scrutinized and there's conditions, and the person who's selling, not every individual brothers and sisters is allowed to sell. أتعرفون هذا؟ The Sharia is protecting certain individuals from being taken advantage of, from being violated, right? Which we'll come on to inshallah ta'ala. طيب, he says, تعريف بيع أنه مبادلة مال بمال ثم حكم الحل له. He says, the ta'rif, the definition of bay', which is the singular term of buyu'. Buyu' is plural, bay' is selling. Right? You can even say what? Buying and selling, which falls under this term. He says, أنه مبادلة. Mubadala, if you translate it literally, means an exchange. It is a transaction, brothers and sisters, which involves making an exchange between two items that carry value. This is very, very important. It is a transaction which involves making an exchange between two items that carry value. Every word that I just mentioned, brothers and sisters, is crucial and vital. Two items. What are two items? One of them is what? Money, right? And the other is a product. Or it could be that I'm what? Just making the exchange. I have a product and you have a product. We exchange it. Does the transaction here become assembled? Yes, it does. Right? And also, he mentions that which carries value. Am I allowed to sell a fly? You know a fly? Does that hold value? Or ants? I found ants. You know what? Let me put it in invest and I start selling it. Yasrah? Is it something that holds value? No, it doesn't. طيب. He also mentions a very, very important legal maxim, which is Al-Aslu fil buyu'i al-hil. Look how easygoing the Sharia is. The Sharia states, as Allah mentions, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Scholars, they derive a very important legal maxim, which is that the base ruling, Al-Aslu fil buyu' al-hil. It is halal until proven otherwise. Sharia is not tough, doesn't make it very difficult upon the people. The asl is that buying and selling, it is perfectly halal until proven otherwise. I am now what? Selling something. Or I'm carrying out a particular transaction. Someone comes along and he says, oh listen, that's haram. Listen, I take him. The base ruling is, it is halal until proven otherwise. Tell me why it's halal. What exactly have I stipulated in the contract that goes against what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned? Tell me. Until you prove to me it is perfectly fine. Does that make sense? That's a very important legal maxim. ثم حكم الحل له. It says يصح بالإيجاب والقبول وبمعاطاة بلا مقول. It says this transaction is valid with ijab and qabul. Like I mentioned earlier. One, he says with his tongue, I sell you this. And then the seller says, I accept. Has this transaction now been assembled? Yes, it has. Is it a valid form of transaction? Yes. Right? Everybody walks away with what they exchanged. Khalas. It is what? A done deal. Or he says, وَبِمُعَاطَاتٍ بِلَا مَقُولٍ. Making an exchange by way of action without even what? Saying something. Like I demonstrated earlier. Then he says, ثُمَّ شُرُوطُ صِحَّةِ الْبُيُوعِ الْعِلْمُ بِالثَّمَنِ وَالْمَبِيعِ. Now we go into the conditions and it gets very, very interesting. It says, there are conditions. ثُمَّ شُرُوطٌ. And I really want you guys what? To write down the examples. وَبِالْمِثَالِ يَتَّضِحُ الْمَقَالِ. There are conditions. What's the difference between a pillar and also a condition? Does anybody know?
Pillar is the basis of it, and you have to follow it.
And there's a condition I don't have to follow? Excuse?
One's a must, quite like a must, and
طيب. Let me tell you guys, right? The poet, he says, والركن في عبادة قد ولجا والشرط في عبادة قد خرجا. Shart, a condition, is a prerequisite. Does everybody know what prerequisite is? Is that which must precede the act of worship. I have to come with it before I do the act of worship. So it comes before. Salah has conditions. One of the conditions of Salah is what? Wudu. Is the wudu inside of the salah or outside of the salah? You have to come with it before or after? Before. In order for that which you are doing the condition for is valid. Does that make sense? So these are conditions that must be met. Right? That comes before the act of worship. Does that make sense? طيب, even أصول زي ما يلزم من عدم العدم ولا يلزم من وجود الوجود, which we're not going to go into at this moment in time because it's too technical. طيب, in order for this transaction to be valid, right, he says there are conditions. Here he mentions, brothers and sisters, 8 conditions. And then we'll stop there inshallah ta'ala. Number 1, العلم بالثمن. العلم بالثمن. The amount needs to be specified. The amount needs to be specified. It needs to be known. Can I now say, I sell you my phone with all of the money inside of your pocket? ما رأيكم? I sell you my phone with all of that which is inside of your pocket. This is a little bit like what? Gambling, صح? I could get more for my money or more for my product, or I could get less. Agreed, brothers and sisters? The amount needs to be specified. It needs to be known. If someone is saying to you, listen, بعدين, take it now, it's yours, and we'll discuss the price later on. You've taken it and you've agreed to it. What could happen later on? He's asking more. This is very, very common in places like Saudi Arabia, Egypt. He said, Akhi, wallahi, khud. Take what you want, don't worry, we will not differ. Can you see how the Sharia is protecting you from having disputes and ill feelings towards your Muslim brother? Could this not lead now to a fight? Where they begin to exchange blows with one another? Bukh, ibalai in the shop. Sharia, brothers and sisters, what is wise? Sharia is extremely wise. So the amount needs to be what? Specified. Does that make sense? So when somebody says, take a car, khalas, I've sold it to you. We'll talk about it next week. La, this type of transaction is not valid. Number 2, brothers and sisters, والمبيع العلم بالثمن والمبيع معطوف على العلم. So the first point that we mentioned is that the amount needs to be known, needs to be specified. Also, that which needs to be specified, my brothers and my sisters, is the merchandise and the product that you're buying. It must be identifiable either through sight or by description. Either by sight or description. That which you are buying, brothers and sisters, must be identifiable either by sight or by description. So I'm now selling you a product and I don't know what I'm buying, but we agree on an amount. We fulfilled the first condition. A little bit like what? Storage Hunters. Have you guys come across that program, Storage Hunters? So there's a guy, and there's like 5, 6, 8, 9 people standing around. So you got a guy who opens the storage on this mobile, right? Or what do they call it?
Container.
This container, na'am.
Garage.
This storage, this container, whatever, right? He opens it, and everything inside of this container is covered with a blanket or with a sheet. You're looking. All you can see is just some parts coming out, some parts going in. It's all covered. Very hard to tell. And you don't know what you're actually paying for. So, it's a bit like, what do you call that? SubhanAllah, my English is going. When you go to a place and it's like bidding war. It's like a bidding war. Auction. It's a bit like an auction. So you got a guy, he says this, $10, $20, $30, and this one says, everyone's putting their hands up. 40, ها؟ محلها صومالي حراش حراج باللغة العربية. So everyone's bidding. He's saying 30, right? And then what? Someone says, okay, increase, 40, 50. Everyone's just bidding. A bit like an auction. All the way up until it becomes like $500. Anyone else wants to increase? $500 this container goes for. طيب It is now time to uncover what is under the sheet. $500, right? Is ready, khalas. He has to take it. Whether he likes what's behind that sheet or not. Gets uncovered, and he finds out, subhanAllah, there are products in there that are over $5,000. Has he made a profit? How much has he made? 4,500. And good return on that bid you made, right? Is that allowed? You paid for that which you did not have knowledge of. You didn't know what you were paying for. This is a type of transaction, my brothers and my sisters, that is what prohibited. Does that make sense? Also, you have these Amazon magic boxes, right? Or mystery boxes. That's what they call it, that mystery boxes. And tell me a little bit about it.
So
See, you're nodding your head. Yeah, hold on.
you would have a price on it, like let's say £10. And
£10 on this mystery box, huh?
yeah, and there would be like, let's say 5 products inside of it, but you don't know. It would just,
You don't know what's inside.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It would just mention it might contain merchandise or notebook or like let's say a figurine. You don't know if you can get it or not.
You don't have an idea whatsoever exactly what is going to be in there. طيب, you end up paying £10 and then you find some ta'ban notebook in there. Huh? Is a notebook worth £10? So you've lost that basically. Or you could get something that is worth more than you're paying for. All of this, my brothers and my sisters, is what? Prohibited due to al-jahala. What is the reasoning as to why this type of transaction is prohibited? Jahala, which means ambiguity, not knowing exactly what the end of this deal will provide you. And there are multiple hadith that the Messenger ﷺ made mention of. For example, he ﷺ نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيع المنابذة والملامسة. What does ملامسة mean? كأن يقول أي ثوب لمسته فهو عليك بكذا. Right? You have so many what? Products here that are all what? Covered. It says whichever one you touch, then it is yours. You have to pay what? 20 pounds. Whichever one you touch, this is a type of transaction that used to happen in Jahiliyyah. Whichever one you touch, you have to take. Sometimes when you go to these fun fairs, don't they have this kind of stuff there? Sahih? They have this kind of Another one that is pretty common is Al-Muamalaat. You get some stones and then you throw it. Whatever it falls on, it's yours. That's more common than the first, right? Does that make sense, my brothers and my sisters? No. طيب. Also the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in another hadith نهى عن بيع المضامين والملاقيح وحبل الحبلة. In the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he prohibited something called حبل الحبلة. هو ولد الجنين الذي في بطن الناقة على تقدير أن يكون ما في بطنها أنثى. For example, we have a she-camel. Let me ask you guys a question, right? Maybe some of our elders, they are able to give us a better answer. We used to have livestock back home. Which one is worth more, a she-camel or a he-camel? Why? Let's ask the older young. Which one is better? Which one is more valuable? Why? Why is that?
She can give birth.
She can give birth. Excellent. This is the answer I was looking for. Can give birth. And when you have a she-camel that's giving birth, isn't that more value for money? Because you're able to sell all of the children that she breeds. However, the he-camel, skin is going to be there, doesn't produce anything, right? You just have to hope that one day he wakes up and decides to have intercourse with the she-camel, and perhaps maybe she ends up giving birth. Does that make sense, brothers and sisters? So what they used to do is, okay, so you have this she-camel, and the she-camel is pregnant. Do you know what's inside of the stomach, in the womb? No, you don't. So they would pay an amount, ala taqdeer, right? Guessing that it's going to either be what? A she-camel or not. And based on that, they would what? Pay an amount. Ma ra'aykum? What is he actually buying? Is he buying something that he's sure of? It's not. And that is what is intended by حبل الحبلة. And then you also have ملاقيح ما في ظهور الجمال. They're all very similar to one another, inshallah ta'ala. طيب. Let's quickly take the remaining conditions. وملك عاقد يكون جائزا. The buyer, brothers and sisters, or should I say the aqid? Who do we mention the aqid is? The buyer and the seller. طيب. What is the seller selling? Product. And the buyer now that's buying this product, he's using, what is he using? It's using money. The seller, brothers and sisters, that's selling this product, he must be the owner of it. Or he must be what? A wakil. Someone who's been entrusted to sell. He can't sell you something that he does not own. Otherwise that bay' will be what? Invalid. And likewise, brothers and sisters, the one who's buying this product must own that wealth that he's buying. Otherwise, this transaction cannot be assembled. It cannot be valid. Somebody now takes the car of his brother and then does the negotiations on his behalf. And the brother doesn't know. And then he comes back, look, I sold your car for you. What do you mean you sold my car for me? Oh, but we're just brothers, you know. La, ma yasluh. Right? He must be the owner of that which he is selling. Otherwise that bay' is invalid. The brother has every right now to request his car back. And you who's bought that car must give it back. Because you bought something from someone who doesn't own that product. I'm giving you guys these conditions and there are so many scenarios that it could be applied to. Does that make sense? Just the other day, brothers and sisters, I was dealing with a scenario where a brother was sold a stolen car. A brother was sold a stolen car. He phones me and goes, what should I do? I was like, you have every right to request your money back. He went back to the seller. They got into an argument. I was like, what do you mean? No, I just sold you. I bought it and I sold you. Nah. You cannot sell me something that is what's stolen. Right? And due to that, he was able to take back his money because it was due to a stolen car that he was duped into. الشرط الرابع, the fourth condition. نعم يكون جائز التصرف. This person who's selling and this person who's buying, we're speaking again about the abd. He must be someone who is allowed to administer his own wealth. And there are three conditions that need to be met in order for him to be allowed to administer his own wealth. Number one, al-hurriya, he must be a free man. Can a slave go and sell? No, he can't. Number two, at-taklif. He must be religiously obliged. What does being mukallaf mean? Someone who has sanity and someone, brothers and sisters, who has reached the age of discretion. Again, you can see clearly the wisdom of the Sharia. Right? Where he is now protecting one from maybe being what? Cheated into selling something. Or for that which is less than its value. Some young people, brothers and sisters, you give them a lot of money. Let's just say now we have a 13-year-old. Is the 13-year-old sane? Sane, صح? Sane. يعقل. He's just now received a huge amount of inheritance. And I says, you know what? Let me go and start buying things. Give him all of that right to now what? Administer his own wealth. What's the likelihood that he might be cheated in a particular business deal that he wants to strike? Very likely, young, find individuals who will come and take advantage of that person. Right? So what this means, brothers and sisters, that taklif, two things. He must be sane, and also what? Someone who has reached the age of discretion. What's the age of discretion in the Sharia? Is that the only way to determine whether one has reached the age of puberty? There are three signs. One of them is reaching the age of 15. What's the other? Okay, maturity. He might be mature and so much more younger. Huh? Hairs begin to appear on one's private area, right? And also under his armpit. Could be any of them. And the third, brother and sisters, he has a wet dream. Does that make sense? طيب. Number 3, brothers and sisters, and this is a very important one, ar-rushd. Somebody who is mature and sensible. He who is competent. بعض الناس سفهاء. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تُؤْتُوا السُّفَهَاءَ إيش؟ Don't give the sufaha. If you translate that literally, it means someone who's foolish. But you dig deeper, it means هو الذي لا يحسن التصرف. He is someone who is incompetent, right? Most people here, I think they come from middle class backgrounds, working class. Sahih? I give you £1,000 and then you spend it in an hour or two. Look. Of course, you know, some people come from very, very, very wealthy backgrounds. It differs. But someone now who comes from a normal background, you give him £1,000, khalas. You give him another, he finishes it. هذا لا يحسن التصرف. This kind of individual, my brothers and sisters, should not be given the right to administer his wealth. So both the seller and the buyer, brothers and sisters, right, must meet these 3 conditions. Right? These 3 conditions, or these 3 descriptions, I can maybe call it, right, must be found within the aqid, the buyer and the seller. However, as-sabi, someone who is now young in age, 8, 9, 10-year-old, has he been prohibited from dealing altogether? They say إذا كان what? شيئا يسيرا. You give him a couple of pounds because he wants to buy chicken and chips. Or he goes to school now, he wants to buy some what? Lunch. Is he allowed? This is what an exemption. How many is that? 5. We've only got another one. Another طيب. Number 5, brother says وكون عقد ناجزا. وكون عقد ناجزا. The transaction cannot be contingent on a future event. Imagine I said to you, right? This phone is yours, however, it is contingent on Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, being toppled over. If he gets toppled over, then I sell you this product. Or I say to you, this product is yours, providing that the Queen passes away. Or this product is yours once Ramadan kicks in. It's yours. Does that make sense? This sale, brothers and sisters, is void because it is attributed to a future date. There's a difference of opinion amongst scholars. هذا عند الحنابلة, right? If a party wins the elections, my car stands sold to you. Does that make sense, brothers and sisters? We're not talking about handing the product over at the beginning of the month. Now that you guys have assembled this transaction. La. We're not talking about handing it over. We're talking about saying, right, if this happens, khalas, this product now is considered your product. It stands as sold to you. There's a difference between saying this and also saying, listen, khalas, we've exchanged, but I'm going to hand over the product to you in a month's time. That's different. Number 6, brothers and sisters, right? الرضا من البائع والمشتري. Right? One buys and sells willingly. One buys and sells willingly. If somebody now puts a gun to you, has sell me your Yeezys. Some of these trainers, listen, you have to sell, and the guy's got a knife. Normally they'll just rob you, huh? But he's actually like doing you a favor. He's got a knife to your throat and he's saying to you, listen, sell it to me. Is that type of transaction valid? Why? إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ عَنْ تَرَاضٍ, as the Prophet ﷺ said. The transaction will only be valid if it is done willingly. Right? لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم الباطل إلا أن تكون تجارة عن تراض منكم ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم. Only if this transaction, brothers and sisters, is done willingly by both the buyer and the seller. Except, this is now an exemption from the rule of thumb, right? The judge can force him to sell some of his assets. This is after the issue now has gone to court, simply because he has so much debt, however he has so many assets. And you have those who are asking for their wealth, give back our money. What does the judge rule here? He forces him to sell some of his assets. And in that case, he must sell it. You can't say, oh no, Allah Azza wa Jalla said this. No, you have to. This particular scenario is exempted from what we are mentioning. Number 7, my brothers and my sisters, وَقُدْرَةٌ عَلَى التَّسْلِيمِ, being able to hand over the merchandise after the deal has been completed, or at the time of the purchase. Does that make sense? Being able to hand over the merchandise after the deal has been completed. You know, sometimes the way people deal is, I say, listen, I'll get it for you. Yeah, I'll get it for you. Huh? Khalas. He pays him, no, don't, I'll get it to you. He doesn't know how he's going to be able to what? Secure that product that he is now what? Imaginatively sold to him. It could be that a car is stolen. Right? The car is stolen. The seller knows that the car is stolen. But he's telling himself, you know what? I'll make sure I find it. And he sold it to him now. Yajuz? Is that permissible? This kind of transaction is not permissible, brothers and sisters. And sometimes you see them what selling it for cheaper. Huh? I sell you my stolen car for £500. When the actual value of the car is about £2,000, just get me something. Get me the car. He might find it, he might not find it. Is that kind of transaction allowed? La. You have something in the Sharia called ju'ala, which basically means whoever does X, Y, and Z for me, then what? I will give him a certain amount if he manages to what? Bring that to me. Can you see the difference now? There, khalas, it's been assembled. £500 is given to him. Right? I've bought it. He goes and what? Looks for a car, hoping that he finds a car which values or stands at £2,000. He'll end up making a profit, right? Again, is that probability type of transaction. However, there's other types of transactions where one says, you know what? Whoever finds me X, Y, and Z, like sometimes you lose a puppy. Huh? Not that you should have puppies anyway. But you lose something, or a cat. He puts out an amount. Whoever finds me, kada wa kada wa kada, then I will give him this amount. That's different. Once the product is found, then he goes, yeah, here's your. That in the Sharia will be considered what? Ju'ala, which is a very different type of transaction. Did you guys get the difference? The evidence for this, my brothers and my sisters, when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam he said, لا تشتروا السمك في الماء فإنه غرر. Don't buy fish that is still in the sea. Indeed, this is what? غرر. This is an ambiguous type of transaction. Right? The scholars, they agree that a type of fish that is inside of the sea, or a tayr, a bird that is flying in the air, لا يجوز بيعهما وإن كان مشاهدا. You are not allowed to sell them, even if you're able to see it. And that is because the majority of the time, handing it over is something that is very, very what? Difficult. And from another angle, they may prohibit, and this is very common in Morocco, brothers and sisters. I remember my dad, when he came back from Morocco one time, he said he would be on the sea, and they would say, we'll get you this kind of fish and that kind of fish. And a lot of the time they'll end up getting you something that looks like it, or something that is similar to it, but you didn't actually ask for it. You wanted this. So you pay the amount, and then he goes on a search. La yajuz. It's not something that is allowed. Right? So selling something, the principle here is selling something, right? Or a type of merchandise that you cannot hand over at the time of purchase. Right? Or at the time of this transaction being assembled. This is not something that is allowed. And also from another angle as to why fish, brothers and sisters, are not allowed to be sold while they are still in the water. Let me ask you guys a question. When you see a fish in water, does it appear to you exactly how it is when you take it out? Ambiguous, right? Ambiguity is a problem. And number 8, my brothers and my sisters, the transaction here, he says, وَنَفْعُ مَعْقُودٍ بِلَا تَحْرِيمٍ. The transaction being void of any impermissible elements. Everybody write this down. The root causes of a haram transaction are 3. Number 1, riba. Number 2, ambiguity. Number 3, taking someone's wealth unjustly. When we judge that a particular transaction or a contract is a haram one, the haram elements tend to what? Eventually return back to these 3 points. Riba, ambiguity, and taking somebody's wealth unjustly. It all stems off from these 3. Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, now conclude with this hadith inshaAllah ta'ala. He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ حَرَّمَ بَيْعَ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْتَةِ وَالْخِنْزِيرِ وَالْأَصْنَامِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they prohibited the price of alcohol and that which is considered dead, like a dead animal. وَالْخِنْزِيرِ, swine, the pig, and also what? Idols. These are things that you cannot sell. And that is because what? In within itself it is haram. In within itself is haram. It is filth and it is vain. Which out of the 3 does this fall under? We mentioned that all haram transactions, they stem off from these 3 points, which was what? Riba, ambiguity. So now buying pig, which one does it fall under?
Second one.
Huh? Or is it a trick question? Brothers and sisters, you have that which in within itself is haram. Because the shari', the legislator specifically mentioned. And you may have that which is fine, permissible. However, some of these elements are found within that transaction. And this is when these 3 points come in handy. Right? Does that make sense? So now the pig, in within itself is haram. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla clearly prohibited it. You have what? Also khamar, which is in within itself what? Haram. It's not riba, or it's not taking somebody's wealth unjustly. No, it's actually what? Buying that alcohol willingly. Huh? And it doesn't have any ambiguity. I know what I'm buying, this khamar here. I know it's vodka and... Does that make sense? So it doesn't come back to these 3. However, it's split into 2. That which is haram. That which is haram in within itself, because Allah says stay away from it, don't buy it. And then you have these 3 types, or these 3 elements that you may see creeping into one's transaction. He It then says وَاغْتَفِرُوا جَهَالَةً فِي صُورَةٍ تَابِعًا أَوْ حَاجَةٍ أَوْ يَسِيرًا. Right? Is every type of ambiguity, brothers and sisters, haram? طيب. Everybody can see the iPhone? We have our brother here, Muhammad al-Kurdi. He wants to buy my iPhone. He wants to buy my iPhone. I give it to him, looks at it, checks it out, goes through it, pretty satisfied. Hand it over to him. طيب. Does he know the color of my battery? Does he know whether every single wire inside of the phone is actually there? And is that something that I can tell? But he's bought it. Do I have to tell him to open up? Because we just spoke about ambiguity, right? The thing has to be clear. You have to know that what you're buying inside out. Is that really the case? Does he have to now open my phone up and get a knife and stick it in there and then remove it like that? Huh? Is that what he has to do in order to check what color the battery is? There's a type of ambiguity, my brothers and my sisters, that does not cause us to differ, like the color of my battery. This is what they call a very small amount of ambiguity, which the Sharia تسامح فيها, has pardoned. Does that make sense, my brothers and my sisters? Or that which is maybe considered a tabi'. It is part of something that you're buying that you cannot separate from. Like, you're buying a camel. You want to buy this camel here. However, the camel is pregnant. You don't know what the camel is pregnant with. Are we going to say now, no, up until it gives birth only, then you can buy this camel? It is the opposite of what I mentioned earlier. Earlier we were speaking about you buying what's inside of the stomach. Not knowing exactly what it is, taking a chance by probability. Does that make sense? Here you want to buy the actual camel itself. And what's inside of the stomach is something that is not known to you, Allahu A'lam, but you're actually buying the camel itself. This is now what? Something that you cannot separate the article of purchase from. Does that make sense? So there are things that, the Sharia is pretty easy going with, which is also ambiguous. However, it is either something very small or it is inseparable from that thing that you are buying. Does that make sense? Anyone have any questions pertaining to what we took? Please, nobody ask me about Bitcoin. Huh? For the Sheikh.
You said that buy fish which are in the water or in the lake is prohibited. What if someone is selling the fish in a pond whereby they sell those fish depending on their age? For example, they know that these fish, they are like 6 months old, and they sell them depending on their age.
If somebody takes it out, any age is, to be honest, is not necessarily relevant, right? It isn't necessarily relevant. Whether it's 6 months or 8 months, does it really actually affect the transaction itself? No, it doesn't. What we're referring to here is, you want to buy this fish, and simply because of the ambiguity of not knowing the size of what you are buying, right? And also not knowing as to whether he can get hold of that which you are buying. This is when it becomes a problem, right? However, if you have a pond where they keep all of the fish, khalas, you've already now managed to, you can just take it out, it's there. Even though some scholars, they still say no. Right? You have to take it out, you have to make sure that you check and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Yeah? So with regards to the age, ya Sheikh, I don't think that actually invalidates the actual transaction itself. It's just a description of it, Some ma'luma. Tfadal Sheikh. Exam.
What's the permissibility of referral campaigns where you have a bank account and then they say refer someone and they have to open a bank account and use their card and then you receive money like £50, £20. You're not really using your card, but you're referring someone to.
So what I basically understood is that a company says to you, if you bring us customers, we'll give you £10.
Yeah, a bank, like a bank.
Huh? Like you get people to come and use the service, and we'll give you that £10. That's just a marketing strategy. Remember what we mentioned previously, right? That transactions and contracts, what is the base ruling? That it is halal until proven otherwise. So if the company now is saying to you, listen, I'll give you money, just bring me customers, is there any issues with that? Does it go back to any of the 3 haram elements that we made mention of? Is it haram? Do we have an evidence where Allah clearly mentioned this haram? No, we don't. Does it go back to either riba, ambiguity, or taking someone's wealth unjustly? I have a company, I will give you from my own pocket, providing you bring me a customer. هذا لا بأس، ما في إشكال.
Just on the brother, he said if you can elaborate. So I've seen the bank says that if you bring a customer, we'll give you £100. Now you said that everything is halal. And
pertaining to the bank.
Yeah, that's.
The bank.
It's like a bank account, like let's say Monzo or Barclays, whatever, and they have like a thread or a link. You send it to people,
and you get £10. Yeah, for Monzo, I remember Monzo.
Yeah.
You get somebody to sign up for Monzo.
Yes.
He clicks on the link, and then they end up putting £10. Like the general principle of what I spoke about is something that is permissible. However, now you guys are specifically asking about the bank.
Yes, like.
Yeah, but the surah, the concept, there's nothing wrong with that, because there's so many different shirikat companies who do that. But when you ask me now specifically about a bank, this is a whole different discussion now. Having transactions with the bank, the money that is generated by the bank, is it halal, is it not? And I one time took a 2-week course with RBS. I just wanted to learn how banks function. We've come across fatwa of the past where the likes of Shaykh Al-Albani rahmatullahi alayhi would say things like, you can't even be the guy who mops the floor in the bank, let alone be the guy who's working in the bank. You know the guy who comes and mops? Because he's being paid from a wage where, the bank, everything they do is haram. Does that make sense? They are interest based, they deal with riba. You have some companies who deal with haram and they deal with halal as well, like Tesco. They sell alcohol, they sell pork, they are making money out of these different haram products. Does that make sense? However, if everything that they do is haram, even Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah has got a fatwa on it that you're allowed to work with companies that both have haram and halal, right? Providing that it's not like the majority, like the clear majority of their wealth or what they generate is something that is impermissible. However, not the bank, is that really the case though? How do banks generate money? Is it through any halal means? Or is every dealing that they have something that's haram? Then when you say majority, how much of the majority? 95%, 98%? 1% of it? If it was something like 60-50, we could maybe work with it. When I had that course, I remember RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, they broke it down for me. We make money like this. This is sometimes what we do. We make money like that, and kada, and kada, and kada, and kada. Which really surprised me. Which really, really surprised me, how they actually generate income. But that is a very, very dark grey area. Not just a grey area, very dark grey. That which relates to the money that the banks give you. So it's just best to kind of like avoid it. The concept of referrals, there's nothing wrong with it. But when it comes to the bank,
earlier you mentioned, could you just go over it? You pay someone and he says, I will find it for you. You mentioned that transaction was not valid. Is that correct in understanding?
You pay someone.
Yeah, and then he says, I will find you something. Is that
okay? طيب. What were one of the conditions of buying and selling? قدرة على التسليم. To have the capability, the ability to hand over that which you are selling at the time of the transaction. Right? I have a phone that's been stolen. I say to you, Muhammad, I want to sell you my stolen phone. And you say, no problem. But I'll buy it for, how much do iPhones go for today? £800. I'll buy it for maybe what? £300. And you give me the £300, right? What are you going to do then? You're going to start looking for the phone, right? You may find it, you may not find it. By the way, this transaction is done. You've handed the money over to me. Is it something, or this type of transaction, is it halal? No, it's not. Why? Because I can't hand over what he's just paid for. Does that make sense? That's something. There's something else in the Sharia called ju'ala. My kite, or let's just say no, my football is stuck on top of the mobile. Whoever gets me the football, I'll give him £50. Because that football is so dear to me, my dad passed it on to me, which was passed on to him by his grandfather, or like the cricket bat. Right? Go into some homes today, they have cricket bats. That Imran Khan gave to someone and then they passed it on and whatever have you. Right? Someone says, whoever can get me that, then I'll give him what? A price. Can you guys see the difference? Is the difference distinct now? Whoever does something for me and then I'll what? I'll give him some prize money. Does that make sense? As opposed to the other or the first scenario that we mentioned. You're buying it here, you're paying here. Take £500 and then he starts searching for it. There's a difference between the two. I hope that's clear. Here you can't hand over the product. There are things that we buy, right, knowing that that person can't actually hand it over to me. Which is what, by probability, you know what, I might be so on and so forth. We'll stop there inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Inshallah ta'ala, we hope to go through that which remains. Right? A lot of that which I'm going through, my brothers and my sisters, are that which is very, very relevant. We want to be businessmen. We have to have some sort of idea of how to at least go through some of these very important aspects of transacting.
Now, before you go, brothers, inshallah, 1 second. Barakallahu fikum wa jazakumullah khairan. Ustadh Abu Taymiyyah.